Welcome to Suzanne's studio. I'm Suzanne Barnett, your host, and tonight I am so pleased to introduce Connie May. Connie May is a woman of many, many talents. First of all, she is the owner of a very luxurious consignment store in downtown Los Altos. Connie is a very, very prominently talented horsewoman. I just found that out. And furthermore, Connie was named Woman of the Year in 2010 and 2011 by the National Association of Professional Women. P.S. One of the reasons that I wanted to have Connie on my show is because her life has been a virtual soap opera. Wait till you hear. Connie.
Hi, Suzanne.
You didn't know that. I just added that soap opera.
Well, it's been a soap opera, but it's been a good one for the most part.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, and I've been looking forward to this. I remember us meeting.
Tell how we met.
I was just opened my store. It was in November of '09. The day I opened my store, I found out that someone very dear and close to my heart had been diagnosed with neck cancer. And I believe I was in the store shopping for sundries, maybe some toilet paper or something, and I was standing in line and I couldn't hold the tears back. And I believe you were standing behind me. And you just came to me in warmth, and you came to me with such compassion. And when we started talking about why I was crying, you really were able to draw me out of the little moment that I was having. We all have moments where we're in public and we just can't hold it in. And you were able to share with me a personal story about yourself, and I was able to open up to you. And from that moment on, I've just felt a kindred spirit. You've been a good customer, a good friend, and we've shared a lot together. And I really appreciate that you have me on your show today.
Well, thank you. Connie, let's start with the soap opera.
Oh, dear. Do you want to start and go backwards, or do you want to start and go forward?
No, let's start the backwards with the husband, the first husband.
Well, let me go back a little further so you can understand how I ended up in that situation.
Okay.
I was raised in a really rural community in Idaho, population 168. There were probably 78 kids in my school between kindergarten and 12th grade. Very, very rural community and very Mormon community. And I was raised to believe that the first thing you do when you get out of school or while you're in school is you get married. And I did that. I got married very young. I believe I was 18, very close to 19, but I was still 18. I married a radiologist who was 10 years older than me. And he was just the first guy I kind of met. I mean, it was sort of, there wasn't a lot of thought. I was probably too young to think about what I was doing, other than I was doing what I believed I should do, which was get married. And we eventually, after a lot of trying, I had a son. And his name is Sean, and he was a beautiful baby, just the pride and joy of my life. And I was working while we were married. He worked at the hospital on the graveyard shift, and he owned a gymnastics school, and he spent a lot of time, doing postgraduate studies and working in the hospital and running his gymnastics school. And he had a little pupil who was our babysitter. One day in the summer of August of '84, when my son was 2 years old, I got a phone call, and the oldest of 7 children, my mom and dad had 6 girls, and then they finally had a boy. And my brother David was riding his bike in our little teeny tiny town in the middle of nowhere, and a semi-truck came through town and ran over him. And I immediately wanted to go home and be with my family, but didn't get there quite right away because I couldn't find my husband. I found a ride with a relative, went home, supported my family as the oldest child. It was really, really hard. My dad was the EMT on call that morning when it happened and had to keep my brother alive while he was transported to the hospital. And shortly thereafter that, about 6 months later, while I was still home comforting my family, I came home to my home in Utah, and my son was gone. My clothes were gone. The furniture was gone. My husband was gone. My son was gone. I was in shock. I mean, I was already in shock before that even happened. It was like I wanted to pinch myself and get out of the nightmare that I was in. It was just unreal. And the first thing I thought to do is, well, what happened? You know, what's going on? Where did he go? Why don't I live in this rented house anymore? What's going on? Mm-hmm. And I'd been gone for a period of weeks. Pardon me. I couldn't find him. Nobody knew. They'd seen a moving van pull up, and nobody bothered to find out. And my son was gone. My husband, who I loved, was gone. And I was alone, and I was alone in a really, really bad place. I was young. I was very young. And being dumped at age 23 is not really flattering. Maybe I was immature, maybe I wasn't. I don't know why this happened to me. I may never know. But it was a shock, and a shock that was even more shocking when I found out that it wasn't kidnapping, and the law enforcement wouldn't get involved because we weren't separated and we weren't divorced. So there I was. Nobody was willing to help me. The church that I grew up in wasn't willing to help me. The police weren't willing to help me. This was something that was perfectly legal in 1984 because there was nothing documented that stated that one or the other of us had sole custody. And I found out later that I could have done the same thing. I would never have done that to somebody, but that was the biggest soap opera of my life.
Oh, of course. How did you get through it, Connie?
I didn't for a while. I really didn't get through it for a while.
But you were penniless?
Penniless,
you were
homeless. And I was looking for my son, and that's all that mattered. But I had no way to look. I went to family and borrowed money. We hired detectives. I hired an attorney. I filed papers, but where do you send them when you can't find the person that you're trying to serve? I knew where his parents had lived. I went back there to try and find him. I spent a good year of my life running into brick walls, no leads. It wasn't like today. There wasn't the internet. There wasn't resources. Mm-hmm. There weren't even really support groups. And I put together a support group for women who were in my situation because this is so amazing that a man would take a baby from its mother and leave without explanation and leave without warning. Eventually I said, okay, well, I've beaten myself up, I've done everything I can, and I can lay here and feel sorry for myself and cry all day on Mother's Day and Christmas and birthday, mm-hmm. or I can get up and go back to work. And I decided to get up and go back to work. I decided that I was worth saving, even though I was alone and I did not have the thing that mattered the most in my life, which was my son.
Of course.
And my parents' first grandson. But I picked myself up. I got a job. I moved to California, and I went to work. And I just sort of decided that I was worth saving because I wasn't being saved wallowing in pity. And I felt that I had something to offer.
So then what happened?
Well, I moved to California and I got a job working for Wilson Suede and Leather at the time. And I was there for about a year and did really, really well. And they made me a sort of a manager that would go in and change over stores that weren't doing so well. Did that for a while. I then started a business with a friend, and we did credit reporting. And back then, again, not so much internet. Things had to be done manually. Dot matrix, information was slow. And we did this credit reporting bureau for a couple of years, and we were very successful. And I sold that. And again, I just focused on work. I mean, everybody can be a holic to get through something. At that point in my life, I just clung to being busy. And I stayed busy, and I kept my mind on my work. But I couldn't get through a birthday or a Mother's Day without a breakdown.
I was going to say.
It's not like it went away.
Without that little boy.
Yeah, not knowing where he was,
Yeah.
not knowing who was caring for him, not knowing if he was alive or dead. It was the most agonizing, painful thing that I've ever been through. It was horrible. But again, I became a workaholic. And I took my mind off of it by working hard and working my way up, you know, sort of like I was trying to crawl out of a hole. And it was a hole. It was a hole of sadness, a hole of despair. And again, I stayed involved in groups that were trying to change the laws so that kidnapping was kidnapping, whether you were married or not. Nobody has a right to take a child from a parent. And that law is now changed. And I had a little bit to do with it, not a lot, but I like to think that I did do something about that problem. Because it was a big problem, I found out. It was a huge problem.
Of course.
And many women and men were being affected by spousal abductions. And I got involved with the milk carton campaign, the missing and exploited children campaign. I did what I could. And mostly it was self-serving, to be honest. I wanted my son.
Of course.
And I was working with these agencies in hopes that I would find him.
Were you hopeful the whole time that you were ever going to see him again?
That depended on the day. I had good days, I had bad days. I had days where I believed and I lived for it, and I had days where I fell into just despair that it would never happen, that I would never know my son. But I kept on living. You know, I kept on going. I kept on believing, ultimately, that somehow, some way, someday, this would happen. And I just sort of let it go into the karma of the world and chose to believe that we would be together. And I chose to believe that if I bettered myself when we were together, he would have a beautiful mother. And that's what I wanted. And I wanted my son to be a beautiful son.
Yeah. So then what happened with second husband?
Oh, second husband. Oh, jeez.
You
Mistake
really had
number
the luck.
2. I didn't have very good luck with the men in my life. I will grant you that.
Until recently.
Oh, until
But that's
recently.
the end
But
of the
see,
story.
That's the
Okay,
end of the story.
okay.
We're getting ahead of our house.
We got to tell the bad part.
We're talking about how life can be so, how it can change so quickly, and how little control we can have, but how much control we can have. You know, we can't choose necessarily what happens to us, but we can choose how we respond to it.
Exactly.
And that is the meaning of life, really is. It's about, in my opinion, choosing to do something better than letting things happen to you. Choosing to take those things and make them positive in any way that you can. I remarried about 10 years later. And I married rather quickly without much thought. I thought, well, I'm getting old. I was in my mid-30s, and I wanted a family still. And I married a man who had just come out of a divorce and was pretty bitter about the divorce. I must say, he wasn't living the there's always something better on the other side, or the glass is half full. He was pretty angry, and he was in the middle of this bitter divorce. And ultimately, you're not going to believe this.
What?
Did the same thing.
No way.
Yes. No, but he didn't have a child to take from me. He just took all my physical belongings.
Tell about that quickly.
Very quickly, I was in Idaho. And this always seems to happen when I go back home to visit my parents. And I came home and the locks were changed. And he physically threatened me that if I didn't sign the divorce papers when we were alone in the car, he physically threatened me. And I signed the papers. And it gave me nothing. But I didn't want anything from him. I mean, if that's how he felt, that's what I wanted. And so I left the state that we were living in at that time with nothing. I had a pair of jeans, some tennis shoes, a jacket, and about $100, and of course my family. And I chose to move here to the Bay Area. I didn't know what I was going to do or where I was going to do. I had no clue. And I went into Neiman Marcus one day. I went out with what little money I had left and bought a nice suit and went in and applied for a job and started working right away. And as always, I saw my life as something worth living, because someday, somehow, some way, I was going to find my son, and I wanted to be able to provide for him and for him to have a good life. And I learned a bad lesson twice, but I wasn't bitter or angry at myself. Sometimes we experience things in duplicates and triplicates and we don't learn, but eventually we learn. Many of my friends have gone through things more than once. There's a phrase that we use in the horse world: you get back in the saddle. You know, you don't just fall down and say that's the end of it. You just get back in the saddle, and life is like that. You have to just keep pushing forward and keep working for what matters to you. And what mattered for me was that I was a whole person when I came in contact with my son, that I wasn't bitter, that I wasn't angry, that I was a happy human being. And I worked to that. I got started at Neiman Marcus, and about a month into it, I went out one day for a sandwich, or I think it was actually nighttime. I went out for dinner after work, and I sat down next to a man, and we casually talked. And we talked about getting together the next day for a bike ride, and I was supposed to call him at 11, and I called him at 11:05, and he didn't answer, and I wished him a nice life, and I kind of went back to work. And about 3 months later, he came into the store, and he said, "You never called me." And I said, "No, I did." And he said, "Yeah, but you left such a cryptic message." And I said, "No, I wished you a nice life." We've been together for 13 and a half years.
So the third time was
a charm. Now, I continued to work at Neiman Marcus, and one day I was on my way to a hockey game with Bill, and I got a phone call from my mother. And my mother's, as a Mormon woman, is very big into genealogy. And she has our family tree on the internet. And she was sobbing, and I said, "Mom, what's wrong? Who passed?" You know, that was my first thought. And she couldn't stop crying. She said, "I got an email." And I said, "Well, what is it?" She said, "Sean, your son emailed me. He Googled his name and saw his name on my family tree. He wanted to know how you died." So apparently his father had told him that I had died, and that's why he had no contact with me. I immediately stopped the car. I immediately turned around and went home, got on the internet, and we made contact on the internet. I didn't want to push myself on him. He was at the time 19 years old. I'd waited 17 years and worked 17 years to be careful about this moment.
Yeah.
To be really careful about this moment.
So then what happened?
We got together.
And what was that like when you first saw each other?
When I first saw him, it was like he was a 2-year-old. I recognized him instantly. I hugged him. I smelt him. I closed my eyes and I just breathed him in. And it was the most cherished, besides his birth, moment of my life. And we got along like peas in a pod immediately. We had so much in common. He loves music. We love the same kind of music. He loves art. He's an architect, and I love art. We've been in contact. We've just been in such close contact ever since. It's just been a pleasure. But
what did he do when he saw you? What was his reaction?
He ran to my arms.
Yeah.
He ran into my arms. It was like all that time didn't matter because we had each other now. I flew him out immediately to San Francisco. He was living in North Carolina. And we spent 2 weeks together just playing like kids. And it was the best time of my life. And I never thought, there were times where I never thought that would happen, but I always believed it would, and it did.
And it did.
And it did.
What happened to the father?
We don't talk about him, but he remarried, and he has a half-sister, and I have chosen not to discuss the past because, again, I don't want to change him into a negative being.
But you have to, you didn't tell him the truth?
No.
Connie.
I told him his father lied when he told him I had died, and I told him that I had nothing to do with our separation. that it was his father and he needed to talk to his father. I did not want to be a burden. I didn't want to put the garbage in his backyard. I didn't feel he needed it.
I can't understand that. I really can't.
I did that.
That you wouldn't just.
Why would I? He lived with his father for 18 years. He loved his father.
So what?
I wouldn't
But what
do that.
he did to you, and to have your son think that you were dead, how dare the father do that?
How dare he indeed, and that's on him. That will be on him for the rest of his days, and his son now knows about it. He knows that I wasn't dead. He knows that I'm alive. And my responsibility to my son is not to burden him with what happened when he was 2.5 years old. My responsibility to my son today is to show him joy and to do great things for him and to share my life with him and to lift him up
But
and
what
build him
must
up.
he think about you, Connie?
He doesn't think anything but wonderful things about me, and I think deep down inside in his heart he knows, because he was lied to. He has to know. He was told I was dead.
But the other part of it was that, wouldn't he wonder why he was taken away from you?
He does wonder, but he doesn't want to know, because he loves his father, and I don't want to take that away from him. And again, I don't want to shatter his home that he has where he's been his life. I don't want to turn him against his father, even though he deserves it. That's not for me to do. That's a decision that my adult child should make for himself.
The father should be in the penitentiary.
He should be, but he won't be. And there's nothing I can do to change that. The laws do not support that at this time, because when it happened, it wasn't illegal. He didn't violate law. Unfortunately, if he did it today, he would be in a penitentiary. All I know is I have my son. And every day I wake, that brings me joy. In fact, I want to tell you something.
Okay.
I found out today I'm going to be a grandmother.
No way.
Yes.
How
he told
wonderful.
me just today. He and his wife are expecting.
Where do they live?
They're living in Dubai.
So how far is that?
A long ways away.
Oh my God! Well, you're going to have to boogie over
I'm
there.
going to boogie
all
over
the
all the time. That's going to be my new place. I'll buy some Arabian horses while I'm there.
Yes, and we have just a few minutes left. It's such a wonderful story, unlike Russian stories where everybody dies. Although that has been
Yeah.
I'm really shocked. But anyway, I knew that, but I didn't know as many details as you've just told.
Yeah.
So I do want to show this. This is something to be so proud of,
Thank
Connie.
you.
Let's see if I can hold this right. Is that okay? Such an honor, and so well deserved. You should have an honor for being the mother of the year.
That would be, honest to goodness, that means a lot to me. But that would mean a lot more. But I am the mother of the year. My son loves me. And I love him, and we have a relationship, and we're making it for lost time. In my heart, this past Mother's Day was beautiful. I
can imagine.
I know my son. I know his wife. I
How do you
spent
like
time
his-
in Maui with them. We traveled together. They're coming out next month, you know.
Do you like his wife?
I love her.
Oh, thank God for that.
Ryan is a beautiful, beautiful lady. She's a gorgeous woman, and I like her very much, and I'm so proud that she's going to be my stepdaughter and bear my grandchild.
Your daughter,
and
not your stepdaughter, your daughter-in-law.
daughter-in-law. Sorry, daughter-in-law.
So your life has turned from a real tragedy. You know, I wanted to think of the soap opera that would befit you. I think I'll think of it after
As
the
the
show
world
is
turns
over.
or
As the world
something? I
turns.
don't know.
No, but I mean, how one woman, one person, you know, there have been other people that have had lots of tragedies in their life, but what I think people should know, the audience, is that here you were, a broken woman, penniless. Twice. And how you got through it, and now you're so successful.
Yes.
You've got a hot boyfriend. You've got a gorgeous, wonderful shop.
I've got 4 houses and 5 horses and
you
5
just had a
cars
baby horse.
I just had a baby horse 2 weeks ago, a little girl, and I mean, I have everything that I could ever want. And I think that in life, if you really look for the good, you'll find it. I really think
Do you
that
really believe that?
I really believe that.
guess
In my
it's
heart
true
of
for
hearts,
you.
for me, it's true.
Yeah.
If you look for the good, if you really keep your heart good, and you keep your friends good, and you keep your support system good, how could anything but good come? And in these trying times that we live in, where there's so many things that we can look around at and just shake our heads and say, oh my gosh. I always just try and like the day I met you, you came into my life at a time when I needed you. And that one simple moment at Drager's, I cherish that. Those are the things I cherish. It's not private jets, it's not houses in exotic places. It's the moments that we have with other people and the love that we share with other people.
But now you're the Real Housewife from Los Altos.
I really am the Real Housewife from Los Altos, and I'm going to be a grandma.
I know, but I'm so happy that you've been here, Connie, because I think a lot of people could not have, number one, gone through what you went through, and you came out smelling like a rose. I mean, I don't know if that always happens.
I'm sure it doesn't always happen.
But the fact that what you say is that you got through it because you believed in yourself.
I chose to make myself a person that my son could love.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be bitter. I didn't want to be hateful. I didn't want to be angry. I didn't want our meetings and our time together that we have left, because time is precious on this earth.
It is. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you,
And
Suzanne.
I wish you just more and more happiness, because you really deserve it. And my crew, I just can't believe, my crew is so wonderful, talented. We have such a good time. KMBT is the best. And this is what I always say. And I thank my audience for watching. What would I do without you all? Plus the fact, I cannot wait to see you next time. Bye-bye.